are we today? Thank you for joining me back in the greenhouse once again. If we haven't met already, I am Sam. I am your crazy plant lady in Melbourne. As you can probably tell from this video, this one we are going to be talking about pots. Let's talk about pots, baby. Let's talk about you and me. So you're probably wondering, Sam, why are we talking about pots today? Because every pot is a little bit different, and I feel like depending on your needs and your plants and how you water, you might actually want to change up your pots. I know that I did throughout my plant journey. I went from nursery pots to terracotta pots. I've had a few ceramics and I've had some clear plastic ones as well. So I wanted to do a video that can kind of help you guys determine what pots that you should be using. I'm sure there are other ones that are out there that I haven't really thought about, but here we'll be talking about several different types, and we're going to be talking about the pros, the cons, and who would normally be drawn to this type of pot. So let's get started. Let's start with the simplest and the one that majority of people use. It is your run-in-the-mill plastic nursery pot. So you normally get this with any plant that you purchase, super duper cheap. Now, of course, the pros for this is that these are practically free as long as you purchase a plant. And additionally, when you transfer a lot of your plants from a nursery pot to something else, whether it's like a bigger size or you're changing it up into something like terracotta or a ceramic, then you normally accumulate a lot of these, so therefore you don't necessarily need to buy them. But even if you do, your local hardware store normally has them for dirt cheap, like I'm talking about a few cents, maybe a little dollary dues. For me, the biggest pro to this is that they are super cheap, super readily available. One thing I'm going to be talking about with regards to pots is also the watering. So how frequently you need to water or how long the pot can retain its moisture or the water. When it comes to plastic, because the only way that the water dries out is from the top, and also if it has holes from the bottom as well. So it is not porous. I will get to that when we talk more about terracotta. This retains water quite well. So if you are a underwaterer, you may be looking into keeping into plastic because it retains a lot of the moisture. In terms of root health, this is not as great as other alternatives, but we like that they have drainage holes, always a plus. Moving on, we can talk about terracotta. So I've got this little terracotta pot just here. Now these guys aren't as cheap as, let's say, nursery pots, but in comparison to other things, these are still relatively cheap. The best thing about terracotta is, one, it is aesthetically pleasing. I think any greenery, when you put green and like this orangey terracotta color together, always makes the plant look mwah. I think the biggest pro about this is that it is porous. Porous just meaning that it has holes for water or other things to kind of travel through. Allows osmosis to happen, so the water, wherever it may be, it can escape from anywhere. So in the plastic pot, it can only really escape from the top and the bottom where the holes are. Because this is porous, water can escape really easily, which is not necessarily a good thing if you are a underwaterer, but this is fantastic for overwaterers like myself. Because I love watering my plants a little bit too much, these guys are really good because it's increasing that surface area for water to escape from. It's also really good for the plant roots as well. If you haven't guessed it, I freaking love terracotta. So I've realized over the few months of having terracotta, particularly in summer, that there are definitely cons to this. Like I said, that in summer it is super duper hot in Australia. It can reach up to 40 plus degrees Celsius. Majority of the days are like 30 degrees up, which means that if things are in terracotta, they pretty much have to water every single day. So if you are a committed plant parent and you don't mind that hassle, then terracotta is just fine. Water every day or whenever you need. But if you can't really be bothered watering every single day, it's not that great of a choice, specifically in summer. And another thing that I found when you have terracotta and it is really hot, if you have your plant, for example, so it doesn't really show, but hypothetically, if this plant leaf were to be touching the terracotta, when the terracotta gets really hot in summer, that leaf will burn. And conversely, if your terracotta pots are in a cold area, these pots get so cold in comparison to, like, let's say a plastic pot. But overall, I adore terracotta, particularly for my monsteras as well as my philodendron, and they really love the terracotta and breathable porous nature of it. If you were to look around my greenhouse, you will see lots of terracotta. Love, love, love these guys. Another con to terracotta is depending on the nutrients or the excess of minerals and the frequency of your watering, sometimes there can be mineral buildup, which you see on this pot just here. Now for some people that looks cool and they actually really like the rustic look. For some people they might be like, that's disgusting. I honestly don't mind, but if it really bothers you that much, you can clean it off. It doesn't do any damage to your plants whatsoever. Again, depending on personal preference, you like the rustic look or the clean look. So now let's talk about ceramics. So I think the best part about ceramics is that you can get some gorgeous, beautiful pots. Terracotta, beautiful in terms of aesthetics, simplicity, but when it comes to ceramics, you just can't go wrong with the beautiful art that gets on a pot. There are so many designs out there. Some of them are really playful, some of them are more minimalistic, but I find particularly for houseplants that are in the home, I think that ceramic is one of the most beautiful ways to display them. So some of them do have the drainage hole, which is really good. Some of them actually don't have drainage holes, in which case that's more of something like a cash pot, which is, for example, you have a plant in a nursery pot. So let's pretend this guy right here, this is my meeee cutting, and if it didn't have drainage holes, you could put a plant in a pot, chuck it in there, and so that when you have to water, you can either take it out or keep it in there and it has like a little reservoir of water at the bottom. I personally really love drainage holes just because, as you know, I'm an overwaterer. But again, if there is no holes, it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me, but it is just easier to have a hole. So a lot of the time we'll put up their plants directly in the ceramic. I personally don't love that. I normally like keeping them as a cash pot and having it more like a decorative addition to the plant. The main con to this is that they are hella expensive, especially if you compare it to the other alternatives like a terracotta pot or a plastic pot. But I also find that with ceramics that they don't necessarily get to a really big size in comparison to like a nursery pot or even a terracotta pot, where you could literally have a human size version of that. Still super duper beautiful, and I have more. I should show you. So both of these pots have already been shown on my channel before, and this is by Plant Abby. These guys are so gorgeous, and they're actually very reasonably priced. I think I have another one in here. And I've also got this one, which I got a secondhand from, I believe this is from Jacob's auntie. Definitely a pink cash pot because it has 0 hole in there, and you can literally just put any plant in there. These, similar to the more like plastic pots rather than terracotta, majority of the ceramics that you get have a glaze over them, and which means that they retain more water than, let's say, terracotta. So ceramics tend to not be porous. Not gonna lie, ceramics are not my favorite, but they are still no doubt beautiful. And the last but not least, which is my absolute favorite, is the clear plastic pots. So these pretty much get the most questions on my Instagram. So I get mine just from a hardware store called Bunnings for people that are not in Australia, and majority of the time, I'm not gonna lie, they are sold out. So I believe these ones only come in like 3 sizes that I've seen. So I've got this tiny small one just here. This one is a level up, and if you want another level up, you got this big guy. Can you see the little family? So I've actually got so many of these clear pots to transfer all of my anthuriums. Hopefully once it hits growing season, so I have 1 more month before I can like transfer all of my anthuriums. These clear plastic pots I really love to use for propagation. Also on my more trickier plants, the ones that I really want to take a look at their roots all the time. So the best part of the plastic pots is that you get to see the root growth. Especially for propagation, you want to be monitoring it. You want to make sure that there's nothing like root rot happening, and you can really see the progression of the plant. So I will show you just there. It's probably a little bit harder to tell, but you can see all of the roots happening up in there. It means that I can keep track of it and also know that when it is ready to transfer into soil, because right now I'm propagating this baby and it's in full sphagnum at the moment. So when it has a really great established root system, I will see it visually, and then I will know, instead of having to take it out, checking the roots and put it back in all the time. It just helps so that you don't have to disturb the roots of the plant every time you have to check on them. Another awesome thing is that you can check when you need to water your plants. So you can see here that we've got little water droplets. It's cloudy, it's moist, we don't need to water. Once you pick it up, it's a little bit light. and you don't see that much condensation in the pot, that's when you know when to water. I've put that in my tips and tricks video. If you haven't seen that, I shall link above. I just think that it is a really great thing for overwaterers like myself, just so you can keep track of when you should be watering. So I believe in terms of cost, these ones are more like a terracotta pot in terms of pricing here in Australia in Bunnings. They are a little bit more expensive than your nursery pot. So if you're looking for them at Bunnings, Reko clear pots, R-E-K-O. Unlike terracotta, it doesn't get too hot or too cold. So for me personally, I think the clear plastic pots are definitely a winner. Not gonna lie, they're not as pretty or aesthetically pleasing as terracotta or ceramic. But what you can do, because it is a clear plastic pot, you can put it as in pretty cash pose. Problem solved. The answer, my friend, clear plastic. Clear plastic. Why can I not say it? You should try saying clear plastic pots over and over again. Clear plastic pot, clear plastic pot, clear plastic pot. The amount of times that I've stumbled today, someone send help. So I'm just gonna grab one of my plants that you can really see the amazing root growth. This plant is no stranger to you guys, but this is one of the crystallinums that I bought from Fitzroy Nursery, and I recently just put her up in a clear plastic pot, and as you can see, all those amazing roots. And to me, it's just so much better when I can tell that the root system is healthy, we don't have any root rot, and I can rest easy knowing that this plant is in fact watered and I don't need to water it again, and I don't have to really guess. Additionally, I don't have to use a moisture meter because sometimes that can be very time consuming. This is better just that I can visually see it. I know when to water, I know when to not water. God, I love this plant. And she's got a new leaf coming. In the house you go. So that pretty much wraps up this week's video. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope the pros and cons can kind of help you determine which pot suits you and your needs. But of course, to each their own. Regardless, I'm sure your plants will still love you no matter what pot you choose. But let me know down in the comments what your favorite pot is. And until next time, guys, stay safe, stay warm. I hope there is sunshine where you are. Bye, guys. Mwah.